I'd like to welcome to the stage a good friend to the summit and the business plan, Artistic Director at Portland Center Stage, Chris Coleman.
So are you all thoroughly depressed? I'm actually energized, and I'm curious, hearing the framework that Patrick and others laid out for us, if there's anything about the current environment that gives us a shot of success that perhaps we haven't had before. And so we have a couple of business leaders, 3 business leaders with us this morning to take a look at that. We have Sam Tannahill.
Morning, Chris.
Good morning, Sam, who is the co-founder of A to Z Wineries, and he's currently the chair of the Oregon Business Association. We have Pat Reiten, the president and CEO of PacifiCorp Transmission, and the chair of Associated Oregon Industries. And then finally, we have Katy Brooks, who is the president of the Bend Chamber of Commerce. So Sam, let's start with you, since you're awake.
Great. I tried.
So you guys, your 2 organizations are in the midst of a merger, or you just voted on a merger a couple of weeks ago. Tell us about what the impetus behind that was.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, you say our 2 organizations, and I think we're really the business community's organization, so we get up here and tell our views, but it's really been supported by the whole business community. And I think the merger really came about through discussions about 3 years ago when we were finding ourselves, Pat and I and OBA and AOI, were drifting closer and closer together. And we took a long time. It took those 3 years really to smooth out all those issues, to figure out where we had in common and perhaps to avoid any missteps. And I think one thing that really spurred us on was the success that we saw with speaking with the unified business voice in the last election cycle with Measure 97. And I was talking to Pat this morning, and as business leaders and business owners, it's sort of interesting. We had people come up to us and say, congratulations on Measure 97. And for me, it felt weird because we are in the business of creating things. We're in the business of finding innovative solutions to different challenges. That's what business is all about. So to oppose something is tough for us. And what really makes me excited is looking forward and using that unified voice to be in support of things, in support of people, in support of ideas. And if you think it was a success in the last election cycle, just wait till this year coming up. That's what I'm really excited about.
Awesome, awesome. So Pat, besides, maybe there's more in common than you guys thought you had, or maybe there's some overlap. When you imagined this merged organization, what did you think the win would be for the state and for the business environment in the state?
Well, thanks, Chris. And first of all, I want to thank Sam and the boards and leadership and staff of the 2 organizations for working really hard over a 3-year period to make this happen. The timing is right. I mean, the challenges, as Patrick identified, are great. The opportunity that we saw was to meet them with a unified voice, to meet them with a broader, more diverse, joined membership, and to do that in the way that supports the people that support the business agenda, and specifically the Oregon Business Plan.
Okay, so we heard Patrick mention earlier, the 3rd part of this framework is the notion of revenue reform, and I think he actually said a business tax, increasing corporate tax in the state. Now, I've never been to a business summit where business leaders got up and said, we think we should do that. I've never been to a business meeting anywhere in the United States of America where business leaders got up and said that. So is he gone rogue? Is he out on his own? Are you guys in support of that idea?
No, we support the agenda that Patrick laid out. Business is willing to come to the table and talk about revenues, but it has to do that in the context of talking about costs and cost management. It has to do that in the context of talking about the use of those dollars and making sure that they are targeted towards material investments that will move the state's economy forward for Oregonians.
Fantastic. Now, Katy, you're down in Bend, and you guys over the last 6-7 months have kind of done some adjustment of your strategic plan, and it sounds like maybe found more common ground with the Oregon business plan than historically had been the case. Can you talk a little bit about what was driving that, and if I've got that right?
Yeah, it's very similar. In Central Oregon, we're growing very, very quickly. And so some of the challenges that the Portland metropolitan area has been facing for years and years is really hitting home. In general, we support education with the addition of OSU Cascades campus. It really is a game changer for Central Oregon. And we pass our levies, we invest. So when Measure 97 came around, there were several other reasons why the Central Oregon business plan started to come together. It's mostly private sector folks, and looking at infrastructure challenges, education funding. We get something like 7 to 8 people per day moving to Central Oregon. How do we house them? There just was so many things really landing on Central Oregon, and Bend in particular. At one time, we felt it was really important to get the private sector together, to understand what the needs were, and understand that there's going to have to be a way to pay for them, and try and put our best foot forward and find positive ways that we could lead that conversation. And certainly we've talked about a tax in Central Oregon as well. And we're in the habit of funding education. So it's one of those things that it's time. It's time in Central Oregon, just as it is here in the Portland metro area, to really take a proactive role in figuring out how we deal with the infrastructure and the housing and the education that goes along with a thriving economy. There has to be the yin and the yang, and I think that's a lot of the reason why we got this group together. And they've been very successful in putting 5 or 6 different initiatives together that jives really, really well with the Oregon business plan.
Fantastic. So Sam and Pat, this new organization, does it have a name?
Not yet. We're gonna. The organization.
Do you want suggestions?
Please, we'll take them. That's the way I named my first vineyard, was taking suggestions at a party. I don't think we'll do that again here today. But it got named after our first cow. So yes, we're going to take the next 8 or 9 months to really look at those branding opportunities, look at the new name, really bring those 2 boards together, bring the 2 organizations together. And I think part of the reason we delayed bringing the 2 organizations formally together is this session next year, the 2017 session, is going to be really tough. There are a lot of challenges that we need to come together and need to answer, and we need to keep our eye on the ball. And so instead of being somewhat distracted by something like a new name, even though it is important for sure, we want to have our full focus and full attention on the 2017 session and trying to sit down at the table and help fix the challenges that Oregon is facing right now. It's not that doesn't mean that we're going to be not working together and collaborating. Let me tell you, those 2 boards are going to be sitting down a whole heck of a lot, and the 2 staffs are as well. But we really need our full attention on the challenges that Oregon's facing right now.
And define for me, the difference between this new organization and the business plan is?
Well, I think that's an important thing real quickly to back up is we actually went ahead and created a new organization. We simply didn't take the 2 organizations and combine them together. We really took a long time to think about how we were going to make something that's absolutely better. And part of that was bringing in the Oregon business plan into a more shared platform between the new organization, PBA, and OBC. In my mind, and I think Pat's here, the business plan is the long-term hymnal that we should all be singing from. It is the long-term strategic plan that the business community needs to be looking back to when this new organization decides, are we going to lobby for this? Are we going to push this? Are we going to make this happen? It needs to be referring back to the business plan as, yes, that's something that's actually going to help Oregon and help Oregonians. That is absolutely crucial.
Okay. And, okay, so I am a progressive elected official in the room, and I hear the business community saying, yeah, sure, we'll talk about a tax reform. And maybe I'm thinking, okay, I've heard it before, or if I actually am willing to consider that, sit down and have a conversation about some of this stuff with you, how am I not going to get left out in the cold if I take heat from other constituents about it?
Boy, that's a tough question.
Yeah, it is. That's why I'm asking you.
Well, I think.
You get that one, Pat.
Yeah, thanks. I think we should recognize that in some respects we've been here before. My time chairing the business plan in 2010 came after a very divisive initiative campaign, 66 and 67. It came in the teeth of the same type of fiscal shortages and issues that we're talking about now. We set some goals back then of adding 25,000 jobs per year. And as Patrick mentioned, we've blown through that. And in fact, the very kinds of effects we talked about in 2010 have occurred. Based on his numbers, revenues have gone up 40% since then. So the cycle of prosperity works. We can provide more revenues for critical programs that we all want to see, targeted key investments, funding for education, by supporting new jobs, raising the per capita average income of our state, and that works in terms of supporting those priorities.
Great. Sam, anything?
I guess the only thing that I would add is I said before, if you've seen our voice, what we can do in the last election cycle, I'm really looking forward to seeing our voice to support those policies and those people that are really going to move this state forward. When we plant vineyards, we make hard decisions, we make expensive decisions, but we plant for 100 years. And so the business community is willing to get behind and support those policies and those folks that may be difficult right now, but are going to lead to a more prosperous, a more healthy, and a more educated Oregon.
I think that's fantastic. Katy, final thought?
I think that folks in Central Oregon feel the same way. We've been talking about how to pay for some of the things, the infrastructure that needs to happen. And there's a lot of debate on the best way to do that. I think that most folks in Central Oregon, our businesses, are interested in perpetuating a great economy, and I think they know that we're going to have to find really innovative ways to pay for that and come to the table. So I would echo what has been talked about this morning so far, that we are ready to have that discussion and participate.
Fantastic. And I think all of us in this room look forward to seeing the fruit of those discussions. Thank you guys so much for being with us this morning. Yeah.